My name is Laura Curtis. I am a Microsoft 365 consultant. I do a lot of things in this space. My primary work in the space is collaboration with teams in SharePoint. And I've been doing a lot of Powerapps and Power Automate lately as well. I've been really moving into that space. But today I want to show you just kind of the basics in Teams and SharePoint, how they work together and how to make things work easier for you, set things up right, some of the pitfalls to watch out for, and just kind of give a general overview. This is not going to be, you know, a advanced course. This is going to be, 101, pretty easy overview of what everything is. But hopefully there'll be plenty of time left over at the end for questions. So we're going to talk about where the work gets done and SharePoint versus Teams. We'll talk a little bit about governance and permissions, and then internal and external collaboration. And then I will give a bit of a demo. So a little bit more about me. My background's in user experience, web development, solution architecture, and e-learning. I've been working with SharePoint since 2006. My first project was to make a knowledge management application database for Rocketdyne for all of the Space Shuttle main engine documents, since the Space Shuttle main engine was being retired. That's how I got into SharePoint. I've delivered solutions for some really cool clients. I've had a lot of really cool jobs over the years. I've worked for NASA, NIH, DoD, the VA, some state and local governments, lots of professional associations, small and large nonprofits, including the Seattle Opera and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Enterprise business clients like Mercedes-Benz, Monsanto, Dr. Pepper, and then some law firms, sole proprietors, LLCs. I've just pretty much run the gamut on the types of businesses who need this type of help. So let's talk about where the work gets done. So here's a nice 3D picture, but to help you see that a little bit better, I've got a better slide. It blows it up a little bit. So this is from Brad Grissom. I love this, the way he put things together. So if you start in the core here, this is your local, your files that you work on a daily basis. This is where all of your stuff is. So you're going to have your email, you're going to have your notes and your files, your calendars, your tasks and messages. It's going to be in Outlook. It's going to be in OneNote and OneDrive and Planner. And then you're going to move out into the inner circle. So this is when you are working with your team. Say you have a 5-person team and you all work on these files together. All those are going to be in this inner loop here. So you've got your teams, you've got, sorry, that's Planner. You've got your teams, you've got Planner, you've got Office 365. Here's SharePoint. SharePoint comes into this space. So you'll have your shared calendars, you'll have messaging, co-authoring, screen sharing, your online meetings, all of that fun stuff with your inner group. Then you move out a little bit more into SharePoint for the company, Yammer, Delve, and Stream. So you'll have your social engagement with Yammer, you'll have your event calendars and announcements. You'll have communities of interest, your enterprise content. That's going to be primarily in SharePoint. The expertise finding, it will be in Delve. And then you can have the videos in Stream. News will also be in Yammer and in SharePoint. And then you can step out even further to the community. So this is where LinkedIn comes into play. And of course, if you're on Twitter, it's represented there. Any of the other social media is out in that outer loop. So let's talk a little bit about SharePoint. What is SharePoint? It's an online database of files with metadata. It captures all the metadata for you. So there's documents, there's images, there's video. I don't even know how many file types they allow nowadays. It used to be pretty strict as to what they would allow in SharePoint. Now they allow just about anything. SharePoint builds versioning control and workflow around those files. And the versioning is automatically tracked. They can be tied to workflows for sign-off, email, many other dispositions. You can set up really cool workflows in Power Automate now, and you can connect to all sorts of external applications to run things. I love Power Automate. So what can SharePoint do for us? It can eliminate the need for file shares. And this is assuming you have not had a lot of experience with SharePoint in the past. It can increase organization findability, where those files, it can help you search for them. You can search inside documents, look for keywords in the content. It can help maintain version control and avoid sending files via email. So you won't have attachments coming through all the time in your email. You can send a link to the file instead. You can set up SharePoint as Intranet and Filehub. You can also use it on your mobile devices, so you're not having to go and log in to your online servers all the time. You can be on the go to get to your files. It saves lots of time and frustration, especially if it's set up correctly. So there are different types of SharePoint sites. Modern SharePoint, that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. We're not going to cover any of the classic sites. Teams, those are the sites that are based on the Office 365 groups. You create an Office 365 group, you get a team. If you create a team, you get an Office 365 group. Create either one of those, you're going to get a team site in SharePoint. All of the documents from teams are stored there in that team site. The primary focus for the teams and the team sites is the team-based and close collaboration for your specific group. These are not generally the SharePoint sites that are set up for a wider audience. For the wider audience, you will want to go with a communications site. Those have some really cool look and feel now, and lots of customization features in modern SharePoint. And that's where all the cool web parts are that you can add. The SharePoint sites, communication sites, are not based on Office 365 groups like the teams are. And the primary focus here is for sharing the information to a wider audience. So you would have, for instance, your corporate site would be a communication site, and you would have some of the information from the team's sites feeding into the communication site in instances. Then we have hub sites, and those pull everything together. Now, if you are familiar with more classic SharePoint, then you would know probably that there are site collections and there are subsites under those site collections. It's all a hierarchical structure. Microsoft has moved away from that. Everything, all sites now are site collections, and you're not stuck with that hierarchy. You can move things around. So what they did is they built hub sites, and that is a top-level site. It can have teams and communication sites attached to it. They're great for grouping different sites by focus or function, department, region, internal, external access, active and archive content. You can set up many different hub sites, and then you assign communication sites and team sites to those hub sites, and it rolls up all the content for you and helps you find everything. And it helps you keep things organized. And you can remove those sites from the hub sites. They don't have to stay there. So it's not as fixed and rigid as the hierarchy always was before, where you had to create a subsite under, say, you were in corporate, and then the corporate site has a HR subsite, and then all of the HR subsites underneath that. You don't have to do that do it that way anymore. It's very flexible now. Here's a little bit more about this SharePoint Hub Sites. So what it does, and I don't have an example to show you this in the demo, so hopefully you can see this right here. The Hub Site, it'll have this top level navigation. This is how you know you're in a Hub Site. And so here's the main page of this Hub Site. It pulls in all these other sites. So you've got your communication sites here and your team sites here. It brings everything together in one view. It rolls up all the activity from these sites. You can search across, you can go here to the search bar and it'll search all the sites that are associated with this Hub Site. This is the cross-site navigation. So you click here and you go to this page. You click here, you'll go to that page. There's the look and feel is consistent across the sites. It applies one particular theme, so everything, you know you're in the same Hub Site, you know which one you're in. So the admins create these and then the users adopt them and use them. They can make edits and set up these sites the way they want to. So now does SharePoint fit in with OneDrive and Teams? Now SharePoint uses OneDrive as its sync engine, and so does Teams. OneDrive is for your personal and working files. So it's OneDrive for one person. I have worked with several organizations in the past who would set up a OneDrive in someone's personal account, and they would have the entire company put all of their files in that OneDrive. And I'm here to tell you that if you do that, you're going to have a bad time. That is not recommended. Those are your files. If you want to share files like that, collaborate on them, you want to put them in Teams or SharePoint. Teams uses SharePoint as its file storage and then OneDrive to sync all those files. And Teams is where you're going to collaborate real time on your projects and hold the discussions in the meetings. Now, hopefully this is going to make sense to you. I'm going to explain this. I drew this up when I was trying to help people wrap their head around how these all work together. So we're on the Office 365 platform here. You've got SharePoint, you've got Teams. All the SharePoint sites here, so here's an internal hub, for instance, and there's the communication sites under this hub. Here's all of your sites or your teams. And then here's the different libraries or the channels under those sites and the teams. On Teams, here's your internal teams over here. You've got your company-wide team and general channel. Now, when you set up these teams, remember I told you that if you create a team, it creates an Office 365 group, or if you create an Office 365 group, it creates a team site. And then the back-end file storage for that is in SharePoint. So that's what this is. So you've got your teams, you're in this team app, you open up your team app and you see, here's the client teams, there's A and there's B, here's the channels underneath. Here's the client's hub, you can go open this and open the site in SharePoint, you move into the SharePoint app, and then you see the backend database, the SharePoint site where all these files are stored. And then you have the library, the documents, the out-of-the-box document library in these teams, team sites are where all those files are. So each folder in the document library is a channel. Hopefully that made sense. If not, we can go back to it later and I can explain a little bit more. And I'll try to walk you through that in a demo as well. So for Teams, if you've not used Teams, what it is a chat-based workspace in Office 365. It allows you to communicate in the moment, keep everybody in the know. You can send out announcements. You can mention people and they'll get a notification immediately. You can mention a channel and then everyone who is in that channel will get a notification. That you can set announcements in channels and then people know that there's some important communication that has come up. It's a hub for your teamwork. So You have quick access to the information that you need. You can have the files that you're all working on together. So you create a file in OneDrive, and when you get it ready to for your team to work on, you put it into Teams. You share it with your team, and then you can all collaborate on it right there within Teams. You can chat about the document, make notes, annotate, whatever. You can start a meeting immediately to discuss it right there in a video call right there in Teams. So you can customize each of these teams. You can set up different tabs with different apps that are available, things that you want to access quickly. You can set up file storage that goes directly to a SharePoint site or even Dropbox. You tailor your workspace to how your team works. You can set up bots in channels, in the Teams channels, that listen for keywords and will run a Power Automate workflow on them. There's tons of things you can do to customize your team's workspaces. And then it's got enterprise level security and compliance. Now for the way Teams work, so people can go in and see the content and chat history anytime when they're in a particular team. The team chats and the activities are visible to the entire team. There are private chats. You can set up a private chat for small group conversations. Now you can add private channels as well. You have mobile access on Android, iOS, and if you happen to have a Windows phone, there's an app for that. Now, the way these work, the teamwork here, the hub for your teamwork, you have the chat that is the chat with the content, the people, and the tools. It's all live in this team workspace here. You've got voice and video meetings right within Teams. I imagine most of you have had experience using Teams for meetings this year. There's built-in access to SharePoint, OneNote, and Planner, right? And you see these tabs. So the conversation is where all the chat happens, and then files is where all the files are stored. Wiki is your OneNote, and then there's Planner there as well. And you work with Office and other documents right in the app. We've even added Jira in some cases. There's just all sorts of things you can add and have it just show up right there in Teams. And so we'll have Teams running all the time, and that's where you get most of your work done and keep in touch with your group. So some of the cool things that you can do to customize, you create the different channels for the different work streams and topics. You add the tabs to the frequently used files and cloud services. Like I said, you can add Dropbox in there, and you can add file storage for SharePoint sites. You get updates from the apps that you use all the time. You can customize your notifications, turn them off if you're getting too many of them, or you can set them up where you get a notification of someone that you've been trying to reach comes online. App mentions are very helpful. So you can ping someone and get them to answer a question about a particular document that you're working on together. And then you can build integrations with the developer preview APIs. And the security, there's broad compliance standard support, accessibility, there's HIPAA, there's EU. There's the information protection that if you have used SharePoint, you're used to this being available in SharePoint. So the archive, e-discovery, legal hold, compliance, content search, auditing, and reporting. There's some really cool things on the back end that go on with all of that. Tier C compliant, data encryption at all times at rest and in transit, and multi-factor multi-factor authentication is available for enhanced identity protection. This is, okay, that was supposed to be demo, but I'm going to go through the entire presentation and I'll show the demo at the end since I've only got one screen I can go with right now. You'll forgive me. So a little more about governance and permissions. For governance, and this goes for SharePoint and Teams, the key points to remember are you need to do what makes sense for your organization. If you're a large enterprise business and the content that you create on a daily basis is hundreds of files, you're going to want to separate things out, probably have several hub sites, several sites in those hub sites, tons of libraries, and really everything a little bit more granular. But if you're a small business and there's maybe 4 of you that work together on a regular basis, then it's going to make sense for you to have a smaller site. Maybe you just use Teams for everything. And then you use that back-end Teams site for your basic SharePoint site, and you don't even have to get into the communication site at all. Excuse me, you can, of course, but for some groups, that's just overkill. You don't want to overthink it. Excuse me. You don't want to overthink the governance. You want to try to keep it simple. You want to have the team work together to come up with what works best for everyone. You want to make it work for you. And you want to make it work around the way your team works. There are things you can do to help, like say if you're doing a migration from a classic SharePoint site, and maybe there's years of files that are there and some that haven't been touched in years and nobody really knows what's what anymore. One thing you want to avoid is taking all of those files and moving them into the new site, because what you're going to have is like you've got your storage building or your garage that's full of all kinds of junk, and then you're just, if you're moving to a new house, taking everything in that garage or storage building and putting it in, you know, in the new garage, and you're not really fixing anything, you're not really clearing anything up. It's kind of garbage in, garbage out at that point. So one thing you can do is you can keep that classic site, all the content in the classic site, and rename it as an archive, set it as an archive. Take all the documents that are in there and copy them over to the new site. Or not all the documents that are in there. You'll want to take the ones that the team decides they use and will need to access moving forward. And so you move those into the new site. And then you've got this archive site with all this old content in there. So people are more comfortable with the migration at that point because they know that they're not going to lose their old files in case they forgot something, or you know, there's something that turns up they need to go and search for on the old file. So that's one thing, one way to make it work for the team. You'll want to provide guidance in a SharePoint site. So don't go and create this big heavy-duty document that nobody's going to read. What you'll want to do is come up with some bullet points and short descriptions and kind of a little playbook on here's what we're going to do. This is our governance. This is how we're going to handle things moving forward. We use this for this application. We use that for this other application. Our general naming convention is such and such. If you need to create a new site, go on and create a new site. We're not stopping you. Just give all of that data, all that information in a SharePoint site. Just on you can put it on the main page, some people do, or you can create a page specifically for that guidance. And then of course, communication is key. So all throughout this process, you'll want to share with your team what's going on and what they can expect, and any kind of milestones and decision points when they need to come in and say, like, they've got to clean out their files or decide which files they're going to move to the new site. Whenever you're gathering input for how do we want to put this together, how do we want this to look, how's this going to work best. So, you know, set up meetings along the way, set up touch points, and be sure everyone knows where to go and get this news on how things are going. I mean, some people send out these big long emails. Other groups, it's a little less formal and it all goes into a Teams channel. There are many ways to do this, but you've got to communicate with your team if you want user adoption. Now, I've got some governance planning and resources here for you. I'm going to share these links. You'll have them for your records, and you can get to these. And hopefully this information will help you if you are in the position of setting up new sites. So Susan Hanley, she's got a lot of great information. This is one of her documents. She's got great questions there. Planning for governance in Teams, that's from Microsoft. And then Don't Overthink Your Microsoft Teams Governance Strategy. This is a great article here. Permissions. So, and this is not going to be a deep dive because that's Pandora's box, I'm telling you. These are kind of the basics here. All teams are based on Office 365 groups. You can share a team or a document or create a private channel in Teams. For SharePoint, the SharePoint communication sites all have customizable permissions. The team sites are based on Office 365 groups. And then when you're sharing in SharePoint, you want to share by site or library or folder. That's the best practice. You really want to avoid sharing one file at a time if it's in SharePoint. So your permissions resources, there's a lot of information here on public versus private Office 365 groups. There's the group permissions versus SharePoint permissions, the types of privacy settings in Teams, and then the SharePoint permissions simplified. Now for external sharing, when you have some external clients that you need to share some documents with, there are different ways you can share this data. One of them is adding external domains to an Office 365 group or team. For instance, I did a big project with the Seattle Children's Hospital, and everyone on our team, we were guests. Our domain was added into the Office 365 group there for Seattle Children's, so we could all work within their teams and see most of what was there, anything that they added us to. You can also share documents directly from Teams. It'll create a link, a sharing link, and you send that out. And SharePoint.
Laura, hi.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Actually, something that came up today, and I wasn't even sure how to answer that. So let's say you have a private channel, and can you assign external users to a private channel without sort of adding them to the group or the site that's being created?
Private channels.
Because they supposedly are its own site collection.
Yeah, the private channels, I believe you can, since they are a separate site collection.
No, you actually can't.
And then they won't be in the full.
Because I honestly, the thing says it's a different site collection, but when I try to add an external user, it doesn't find them.
No, you actually can't do that. Private channels are a subsection of, when it comes to permissions, the SharePoint permissions manage the teams. And so whoever you add as owners or members can be in, they have access. Private channels have to be a subset of that. And you are right, it does create a separate site collection. That site collection is not accessible from the admin panel. It's only accessible via PowerShell. You cannot manage permissions on it any other way. Those are specially created site collections by Microsoft. And currently there's no way to separate that out. So the only way you'd be able to add external users would be to have them as a member of your group.
Yep. That's what my testing showed. Thank you for proving that. It was a little confusing because it did say it's a different site collection. I'm like, oh, if it's a different site collection, you can do different permissions. Well, no, you can't.
No, I'm with you. I went researching that because I was really frustrated in a similar way because there were things I wanted to be able to do, and unfortunately, I had to dig through a lot of Microsoft documentation to find out where is the site collection and how can I get to it, because I certainly cannot see it through my admin consoles.
That sounds good to me. That's what I was looking for, because that's what I found today, and I'm like, okay. Although personally, for me, when there is external users, just to avoid even a chance of someone getting access they're not supposed to, I create what we used to call extranets. Here's a site, whatever you see is what you get. That's it. And you can still communicate, but it's not within the same team, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think I'm getting the private channel and the private team confused there. Okay, moving on. SharePoint sites, they must be set up for external sharing at the tenant level. You'll have to open them up at the tenant level, and then you can share per site. And one way to set up your sharing with external partners is setting up a separate hub site for those external partners. So we did this at Seattle Children's. So we had a hub site where all the internal work was done, and then we set up another hub for the external partners, and we'd have different sites available for those partners where they could share their documents with us. And then they didn't have, I mean, that just kind of created a wall of separation there.
It's a peace of mind that nothing can go wrong. No one gets to wherever they don't supposed to.
Right. And so you'll have, a different communication site or team site for those, for each of the different clients. So, they have their own stuff available there. You could also break it down by library if you wanted to do it that way. But it just provides a little bit of peace of mind there. Here are some of the resources for external sharing. How to do it, a couple of guides there, and an overview from Microsoft. So one thing you want to try to do is make it work for you. So with all of these things I've already talked about with the governance and permissions and sharing and whatnot, I mean, those are good practices to follow, but making it work for you, there's customization that you can do, and different ideas that are available. So things to keep in mind: that consistency is key. So you want to make sure you've got a naming convention that you're using. Keep everything consistent with the site setup and the theming. So if you have a hub site, then that's going to create a consistent theme across all of those related teams and sites. If you don't have them connected to a hub, then and you can go customize each of the sites individually. They're not all going to be cookie cutter, but you will get a specific top level theme to follow. You'll want to make use of those hubs and that way you get the quick access to all the information that they need. So you can link the teams and the communication sites to that hub. All of the data that's in those sites can be rolled up into the hub site. So then they'll have, you know, one hub site they can go to get their all the news, announcements, things that people are working on, and you know, get quick access to their work for their team, their department, their organization. You can add what your team needs. I showed that one slide about tailoring your workspace to include the, you know, any of the content and capabilities that you need to work with every day. Like I said, you can add in Jira, for instance. You can customize the pages and the themes to provide visual cues to remind users where they are, which site they're on. And then, of course, you want to make sure that your teams and sites are set up in such a way that the members feel safe discussing and collaborating on relevant work. So this goes back to the question about the private channel. Yeah, and so now my brain is honing in on that private channel. So you'll have your team set up, and then people who are added to that team have access to all the channels, but then you'll have the one channel that's private, and maybe a subset of the people who are in that team are in that private channel. Like there's 10 people in the entire team, but then maybe 3 of those people have access to that private channel. You'll want to be very mindful of how things are set up. So private work happens in the private channels or private teams. And then, you know, the broader work happens in the more public channels and teams. So there are a lot of different practices and options for customizing modern sites. There's modern page best practices. I love SharePoint Maven. He's awesome. He's got so much helpful information on his site. He gives how to configure and apply the custom themes in SharePoint Online. I'm going to go to this page here, the lookbook. If you haven't seen it, this gives you all of these different examples. So many. SharePoint Modern, let me tell you, from 2010 to 2015, all I did was SharePoint UI development. And something like this would have taken months back in the day. And now it's instant. It's pretty amazing. So this site will give you lots of ideas, show you how to set things up, what's possible. I love coming here for inspiration when I am creating a new site. So then, okay, and then there's the design guidance as well. So this is going to give you a little bit more information about best practices and what the design principles are, and how to do things. And give you the guidance on how to set up your navigation and how to set up the columns and the web parts, and then using the news effectively. They have actually done a lot in the past few years with documentation and help for setting up, for SharePoint Modern. And I mean, everything is just, I can't say enough good things about it. I mean, coming from that world where it was very frustrating to make SharePoint not look like SharePoint, this just kind of makes me giddy sometimes to look at everything that's available, and it's so quick and easy to use. So All right, let's go over here and take a look at SharePoint. So this is a basic communication site in SharePoint. You've got the nice banner here. Here's some buttons set up, contact information. Here's a news post. There's the documents, recent documents that I have worked on. They're all right there. And then there's a team site. So this right here is what that back end of Teams looks like. So this is going to look more like those old classic sites. And this, sorry, clicked the wrong link. So this is your general channel in Teams. These are the documents that fall into the files in the general channel in Teams. This is what it looks like in Teams. There's nothing in there. I've not got any members, so I've not tried talking to myself yet.
That's okay. We're still listening.
So there's basic chat. And you go here in files, and this is what I just showed you in SharePoint. So let's take this. Click that link and it comes over here to the SharePoint site and it opens the library there in Teams. I know we have, what, 5 people on the call? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Correct.
Okay. And I imagine with this small subset, you probably all use Teams and SharePoint. Is there anything that you want me to show you, like copying files, moving files? Do you know the difference between copying and moving, for instance?
Yeah, I use it a lot at FedEx, so I'm unfortunately very familiar with it.
What
But
did you
like,
interact? You use Teams, Randy?
Yeah, we use Teams a lot, and we use SharePoint a lot also.
Wow.
And
Laura, have you implemented the new home site for Teams? It's
Sorry?
really cool. The home site app.
No, I've not used
I'm trying to take my users actually out of SharePoint and into Teams. And it's a really cool feature. So essentially you have your landing page from the collaboration site or team site,
Mm-hmm.
and you put it inside Teams.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, okay.
And I think what he's talking about is he's talking about the actual root site collection for your tenant, which is your home site. Like when you go into tenant administration, it's the one that's marked home. You can add that as a tab directly or as an app directly into Teams. Now it's a new feature that just came out recently.
Unfortunately, it's missing the top hub navigation though.
Oh, well, then that means that what you're doing is you're not actually using the app with the home. What you're doing is you're adding, I mean, I understand what you're adding because we run into that too. Because what I'll do is I'll take and like we're looking at right now on Laura's screen, the project team. I have taken to make it easier for users and added that as, you know, a website tab within my team. So people don't have to actually go here to get to it and see it. And I'll have that set up. But And you're right, and that's my big complaint, but there is a new way, there's a new app coming out, a new SharePoint app for Teams that's going to change that. So you'll have all of the navigation and everything.
Okay, so it's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. It's absolutely coming.
Because once
would
it's
be great.
there, yeah, once it's there, I probably don't need SharePoint as much.
Well, you definitely get to make a choice.
Yes.
Because the other thing that, I don't know, Laura didn't mention it, the other thing that's new, I believe it's available to everyone, because I think I've seen it in all the tenants I've been in now. You can have your standard team, you can have a private team, or your public team, you can have a private team, and you can have an everyone team, a universal team now, where it's like the public one, everyone can get access to, but you don't have to invite people. They can go search for it, find it, join it without any permissions or anything. This one, when you add it, it immediately adds every user in your tenant to the team automatically.
Did they create Microsoft Teams with the intention to replace SharePoint Team sites? I can see communication sites sticking around, but do you see a world where there's a direct mapping of SharePoint Team sites to Microsoft Teams such that everything is taken care of in MS Teams?
If you're talking about an intranet versus team sites within Teams, I actually train people on Teams a little bit different than Laura does, because to me, the team site that I'm seeing here, this is part of my team, because the structure is that Teams, even though it's a communications platform, it started out with the Skype team building it. It now is part of SharePoint. SharePoint is the platform it sits on.
Oh,
Because there's actually, you can edit the left navigation there and add a link back to Teams, and it'll take you right back to your team. So normally I delete the conversations navigation item, because it actually is a remnant from the old Skype conversations where you used to go get your history in Outlook.
Mhm.
And I add a link for, I usually add a link for Microsoft Teams, because there's one there. When you edit the left nav, it just says, you say add a new link, and it will tell you that you can add a link to Teams. It'll let you pick it. And then I change the name and say, go back to Teams, because it'll then flip you back to that team posts tab.
Yeah, so this, I guess I wasn't very clear when I was explaining this earlier, but this right here, this is SharePoint, and this drives everything that you see in Teams. This is all your content that's in Teams. This is a SharePoint team site, and all the SharePoint team sites now are Microsoft Teams, because they're groups, Office 365 groups. Communication sites are a little bit more of the classic separate, what you would think of SharePoint.
so if we do
a
all our
separate SharePoint website.
Mm-hmm.
if we do all our Teams collaboration in Microsoft Teams, when will we ever have the need to go to a SharePoint web-based team site? Never?
That depends on what you're trying to do. So some companies that I've worked with, they like to do all of their daily work, the day in and day out stuff, all of that on in Teams. And then when they get documents to a final state that they want to publish to a wider audience, those go into a SharePoint site. So like for instance, Seattle Children's, all the work that the different teams were doing, the reports that they had to put together, et cetera, each of the teams would work on those in their team sites, and of course in Microsoft Teams, and those channels. And then once those reports were finished and ready for publication, they would all get copied over to the SharePoint site for everyone to view.
Oh, I see. More of a finished product type of thing.
Right.
Okay.
But there's some, like I had at the foundation, there were lots of clients who that was overkill for them. Instead of going and making this communication site to have all this information, I mean, because there's a lot that you can do on this site, and it can be overwhelming to a lot of people. But they wanted to have everything there. They thought it would be confusing for them to have this SharePoint site that's tied to their team. I mean, that is the back end for their team site. So what I would do for them, of course, they customize this page. You can make a lot of customizations to this page here. This is just out of the box, very basic and bland. But like she was saying, you can go and customize the navigation over here, and you can add in a new library. So like these are all your channels here. You can add in a new library, and you can add everyone to that library and share those documents with a wider audience. So then you'll keep all of your team's documents still within your group, but you can share this page. I'm not sure that's making any sense.
Laura, so you were saying that people worked in Microsoft Teams and different channels, and then they brought everything up to the main SharePoint site. So here's a question. If people work on channels and then there's no need for them, is there a way to archive a channel? And I mean, with all the files and all the communications and all that stuff? Because once you delete a channel, once you delete a channel, well, you can still undelete it, but once it's gone, and all the communications is gone.
Right. You can't migrate them. You can't move them, because you can't get, I mean, you can move the files, of course, but the chats, all of the chats around everything, you can't migrate any of that.
You can archive a team. And when you archive the team, you can't make any edits to it, but people can still get access to it. You can search for it and find it if you are a member of that team.
So can you archive a specific channel?
Not yet. Everybody's asking for that. Microsoft's working on it.
Yeah, I still get, I don't know, like an identity mix up in terms of, the team site, MS Teams. It almost seems like the team site is like an appendix now. It's a non-vital organ. Is it a vestige from the past? Do we still need it? If I delete something from one world, is it lockstep? I know that the channels and the folders kind of map to each other, but I guess maybe using it more will kind of give me some confidence that things are in lockstep with each other from a security to a channel to a folder perspective.
I'm sorry, was there a question?
No, it was more of a comment.
Yeah. Let me go back to yes, this is what I was trying to represent here. This is all the same thing. It's just you're seeing it on two different apps, two different applications. And all this document library is where all the channel files are. What is there anything else that you want me to show you or demonstrate? Like I said, I didn't have my notes available So I feel like there are probably some things that I missed when I was discussing them.
General, just something out loud thinking. Is there, what if, let's say, okay, you mentioned, yes, you have one root hub site and for one, and then another root hub site. Let's say you have, let's say HR, you have a company with the global and you have HR sites for each country. And then you have, let's say, I don't know, operations for each country, a hub site. Is there something to, like a home, something to link all of those hub sites together if I wanted to? Like linking or putting a bunch of hub sites together somehow.
It seems like they were talking about doing something like that several months ago, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's the home that I was talking about. If you can turn your root tenant site, which usually in administration says home on it, and you can change you can have a different site that it's home. It has to be a communication site in order to be designated as home though.
I pushed it via a script shell. It's one line.
Yeah, you have to use PowerShell to do it.
Yeah, so is this what's doing that? I never actually looked around to create a bunch of hub sites, but will I be able to now connect a bunch of hub sites under one navigation? It would be cool to try.
Well, you can do it, but it's not going to be like automatic. You can take a communication site like Laura's been demonstrating, and you can build it out to have whatever information you want on it, and then you can set the navigation on it to link to each of the hubs.
That's still good.
It's really new. I mean, they only pushed that out. I want to tell you, they pushed that out in time for Ignite, because I've been looking at that for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I used to cheat. I used to create in Bootstrap a mega menu, and do that same thing before. But I figured out to use the new tools.
Yeah, Bootstrap mega menus.
Anyway, I think everything leads me to believe that Microsoft is focusing on Teams as the platform and less on SharePoint. Because I haven't seen a new web part for SharePoint almost since it was created. Very little is kind of being built. I never hear any news, oh, we did this for SharePoint, or we did that for SharePoint. Everything is Teams.
Have you seen SharePoint Spaces?
No.
You might like that. That's new. It's 3D, and you can use virtual reality with it.
SharePoint Spaces 3D.
Well, yeah, it's made to be able to use with virtual reality if you want to. It's pretty cool. It's in preview right now.
I'll try to get it. But
what was that called again, Karen? I'm sorry.
It's SharePoint Spaces. It's only available on communication sites.
Mm-hmm.
When you're on a communication site, you can create a new page, and one of the choices is Spaces, and you'll see it says preview and parentheses next to it. So we'll see what happens with it, but I've seen people use that to set up some pretty cool like virtual conference type setups. And I want to play with it some more to be able to use it for setting up like an HR hub where you can go in for onboarding, and you can go to the different, like set up different stands where you can go and pick out the information that you need.
Man, and I thought Lookbook was cool.
Lookbook is cool. Laura had some great resources. She and I use some of the same people when they're looking for stuff.
Yeah, SharePoint Maven's great.
But there's also, hold a second. There's another page that allows me, basically, if I want to brand a site, I use it. You kind of, you pick the colors and whatever, and then it generates the code for you, and you use PowerShell to insert it. It takes seconds. Hold on a second. You know what? Give me a second, guys. I'm gonna find it.
No, you're cheating.
Yeah, I remember, it used to be that we would be held hostage by folks who did master pages. That could be you,
That
Laura.
was me. That was me. I used to get a blank master page and I would be giddy. I was like,
CSS.
yes, that was my jam. CSS, HTML, getting some PSDs and slicing them and dicing them and putting the code behind those.
And now they're making you learn JSON to do it.
Yeah, has anybody done anything with adaptive cards?
Oh yeah,
I love adaptive cards.
they are cool.
Yeah,
I don't make them.
that's my jam
Tell
now.
people what I want, and
Can you make a next meeting about adaptive card? I really want to get into it.
Oh, I should do an adaptive cards.
that would be
That would
awesome.
be
if you
great,
did
Laura.
Yeah.
Adaptive cards, and I mean that's what I do more of. I do less of this that I just showed you, less of this type of training and whatnot, and this type of setup, and now I do more in the Power Apps and Power Automate and adaptive card space.
And Laura, I think what you did in your in the past, making websites look pretty, that's not going to go away. I think, even though communication sites are pretty already, I think your skills are going to still be in high demand, making those communication sites look pretty, using Lookbook, using the adaptive parts like you're talking about.
Yeah, and the Powerapps portals, that's where I'm heading to next. So that's going to be like that's kind of the answer to the old publishing sites. That's going to be for the external facing. So they did away with external facing SharePoint sites a few years ago, which was like pulling the rug out from under me in my career. Because that's all I did was master pages for publishing sites and external facing ones. And but now that's kind of what the Powerapps portals are like now. So those will be external facing SharePoint.
Yeah, but the licensing fees there are just unreal from what I saw.
Yeah, that's not.
I shared that link, and you can take a look that it's that Fabric Web or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So it lets you download the theme that you created, and I actually went in and then I modified the code. I found my own. You can make like a hover pages when you click on a tile. It has a different background. All that. A bunch of stuff like we used to do with Bootstrap or whatever CSS to make SharePoint not look like SharePoint.
Oh yeah, I've used this.
After I had one template, I stopped using it. I just changed the colors and just do it for different sites.
Yeah, this is the theming, setting up a new theme.
Yeah, Albert produces some pretty sharp-looking sites. He's got he's got that artistic side in him as well as the technical side too.
It was just I couldn't stand the way SharePoint looked. Neither did anyone my clients.
No, that's what I used to tell people. People ask what my job was, and I would say I make SharePoint not look like SharePoint.
You know what? That was my thing when I worked. And then when I started making them cooler and cooler, every department wanted me to make, even though like in the organization everything is branded by color and everything, not a single department wanted to have a site that looks like the other department site. Yep. So I was always pushed to make something cooler and more creative and add JavaScript to it and insane stuff that I wish I could do now, but
yeah, they went and changed the model on you.
Yeah.
No, they are not gonna do that, but it was pretty cool stuff because you can take stuff that make cool web pages, responsive HTML pages, and then you put it into SharePoint. It was pretty incredible stuff that we were able to
Yeah.
reach there.
Well, I was doing some custom mobile designs for the VA back in 2011. We had this big site called VA for Vets, and it was all SharePoint 2010. And we created some custom mobile designs for that. And so I have, if you have like Time Hop or like Facebook Memories or something like that, that's coming up. Like it was launched on Veterans Day of 2011. 11/11/11 is when that site was launched, and so I'm getting all those things popping up in my memories lately. That I was working on. I need somebody to test this on an iPhone for me. I need somebody to test this. And it was, yeah, that was when I was really deep into it. That was a lot of work, a lot of fun, but a lot of work too. I kind of miss that kind of thing. I mean, I know there's all of that is still out there. It's just not so much in the SharePoint space. Not as many companies are doing the custom development work in SharePoint. Not like they used to.
I miss those days, to be honest with you.
Yeah, sure.
That's why I'm into Powerapps.
Yeah.
Oh, Laura, going back to the Powerapps portal that you were talking about and how they pulled the rug from under you with the front-facing sites.
Mm-hmm.
You said Powerapps Portal is internet front-facing, and you can create front-facing websites for customers. Is that what that is?
Last time I looked at it, that's what I thought I read. I've not jumped in and worked with any of it yet, though. I know, yeah, there's configuration, administration. I know it uses liquid templates, which is what, that's the language that's used on Shopify sites.
Yeah, so the external part of the portals is actually related to Dynamics 365. So I'm guessing you're doing Canvas apps in Powerapps right now, mostly, because that's what interacts with SharePoint. And then you have to go into the, what's it called? The model applications to work with Dynamics 365, and they've added portals to it as well now with some of the new offerings. So it can be public facing, but it is specific to Dynamics 365. However, I will tell you that if you know how to work with Dynamics 365, you will be in high demand because there are not enough people who can do it.
Wow. Yeah, I guess if it's a CRM and you want to work with your trading partners, you can't be a boy in a plastic bubble. It's got to be external facing or some parts of it. And like Laura says, if there's a Powerapps aspect to it, a Dynamics aspect to it, sounds like there's a lot of excitement in that room. I don't blame you for heading down that route, Laura.
Yeah,
I need to join you because even just today I was contacted on LinkedIn and hey, do you know how to do that? And it was Dynamics development. It's really there. So
Nice.
that should be your next seminar.
I need to do a tutorial on that.
Yeah.
Learn a little bit about that. Yeah. Yeah, it's the direction I want to head in. It's I really enjoyed working on all the Powerapps and Power Automate. I did a lot of that for the foundation.
It should be very lucrative for you.
It's enjoyable.
Well, I mean,
there's so much to. I mean, I don't know the Power BI. I'd love to get into that as well, but there was always like a separation. So the team I worked on was the Powerapps and Power Automate that align more with SharePoint and other other apps.
It took me a day and a half, honestly, working with it to start doing cool stuff. Just basic videos that you find, and it's extremely addictive, even more addictive than the Powerapps.
The Power BI, you mean?
Power BI, yes.
Yeah.
If you think Power Apps are cool, once you start doing that and you can actually slice through tons of data and put slicers and visualization, it's pretty amazing. And honestly, I will always kind of kept it aside, or this is something else, but I kind of had to. It was no choice. We had to do something for work. And wow, doesn't take long at all. Just a few little things that you got to overcome, and that's it.
Yeah, I did a tutorial for it a couple of months ago, but I didn't jump in and try to create any projects. I got pulled onto something else. But yeah, I want to learn that and have the entire Power Platform, and definitely Dynamics. Yeah, that the Power BI stuff, there was another team that handled all of that stuff at the foundation, so we weren't allowed to touch it. We just did the SharePoint based Power Apps there. But I would love to know how to use the entire package. But I think we are close to time
Well, does anybody have any other questions? Randy, Albert, Karen, Deepraj?
I'm looking forward to the next meeting.
For sure.
I agree. I'm waiting for Laura to do Powerapps for us because I saw you light up. Your face just lit up when you started talking about Powerapps.
It's like the
Yep,
blank.
there's the passion.
Yes. That's what we want to see. That's the thing that I find more engaging is when you got excited like you are right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that stuff. That and I need to come up with a presentation on adaptive cards. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through for the adaptive cards. And one of the cool things about working for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is if there's a problem with anything on any of the Microsoft sites, or you call them up and you say, hey, I need you to fix this.
They probably get everything early there too, just like when you see the Microsoft people do demos at like some of the M365 Saturdays and stuff, and we're like, hey, how long till that comes out? And they're like, oh, we're testing it. It'll be coming out sometime in the future.
Yeah, I had to, setting up some of the adaptive cards, the language was not at all clear. There were a lot of steps that were skipped in the instructions, and I was like, I had to go in and figure things out for myself, and then I would be on a service desk call with them and have them help iron everything out. I'm like, you need to state that this is required, and you need to state that this is not clear. So hopefully they've changed all the verbiage on how to set those up now, because you have to register. You have to register a domain. There's just a lot to it, and I need to make sure I still know what all those steps are and write them all down, and then I could do a presentation on. So like I created an adaptive card that had a bot listening in a Teams channel for a keyword, and you type the keyword into Teams and it would send you an adaptive card that you'd fill out. There was another one that I did that had a listener on a subject line in an email. So you send an email to a particular email account and it looks for that subject line. Processes that, and it turns around and sends you the adaptive card for, this was for requesting Office 365 group, for instance. So yeah, and they were all run through Power Automate.
Yeah, in this world of information overload, Laura, these listing bots in the adaptive cards world is so useful, and we could definitely use your wisdom on another session as well. I'm on the website and it just looks so cool. It says a whole new way to deliver UI. Adaptive cards are platform agnostic snippets of UI authored in JSON that apps and services can openly exchange.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. That I did. I mean, I was doing proof of concept stuff for the foundation, for the identity and access management group there, and I had so much fun working on those things. I mean, it wasn't a lot of fun having to spend half a day talking to Microsoft to find out what the heck they're talking about. Like, these instructions are wrong. But once we got everything sorted, it was really cool. I was sad when that project was over.
But they're so cool also because you can reduce email, because you can use the adaptive cards to set, because we have a Power App that I've been working with someone on, and I said, hey, you need to check out these adaptive cards. They're really cool. And the next thing I know, we've got people who, you know, they put in a request, and instead of sending emails, you send an adaptive card. So it shows up as chat in Flow from Flow. So
Yeah.
as far as they're concerned, Flow is a person who's bringing announcements.
Yeah.
And, you know, assigning, and we use it for, like, we actually set up tasks on a Microsoft list, which is a beautiful SharePoint task list instead of the old ugly ones. And it would give them an adaptive card that says, yeah, you got, this was assigned to you, and links them back to it. And
Yeah, this
really
was assigned to you. Click here to go to this and look at it and do what you got to do to, you know, move it along to the next step. Yeah.
I just love anything that will quit clogging up everybody's mailbox with
Yep.
Oh, no.
tiny
Here.
emails, email attachments, you name it.
Yeah, and that you don't have to leave that inbox to go to a website to do this work. You can click a button right there in your email and boom, it's done.
I would really like to see a tutorial on that, on adaptive cards. It's the only thing that I'm missing, sort of. Like, I made my list of things to do, the Power BI, the whatnots, and everything, the home app for Teams, but the adaptive card is on my plate.
Yeah, I need to, I mean, I don't think I have any of my notes from that project, but I know where to look. I can go recreate everything.
I'm just so impressed, Laura, with you and Karen and Albert and Randy, how you guys, you know, you came from the world of SharePoint, but then there's just this explosion of Microsoft technologies, and you guys have embraced it. You know, you're not afraid to climb up the learning curve. You know, even though it's cool, there's still a lot of learning. There's still a lot of, you know, knowing where the semicolon goes. You know, it's really impressive how you've kind of evolved and pivoted, all of you.
There's so much, you know, and there's just so much to do there now. And, you know, I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible to know every aspect of Office 365 right now, but yeah, that's a pretty tall mountain to try to climb.
Yeah.
To be an expert in all of it. I mean, you really got to, I feel like, kind of pick an area and work in that area to really get to where you understand it. I mean, I fall back on all the SharePoint and the Teams stuff because I've been doing that for so long. But as, you know, the companies get more and more Teams rollouts and, you know, embrace modern SharePoint and whatnot, and once everyone sees how easy it is to set these things up and to customize their SharePoint sites and everything, it's basically, you know, I'll go in and give them a presentation like this and say, here's what you've got, here's what you're getting, here's what to look forward to and how to set this up. And then I, you know, walk them through, I hold their hands and I help them set up the site. But once, you know, and I train them as we're going. But once that's taken care of, you know, then I'd let them loose and they manage their own sites. So there's not as much of this actual SharePoint work to do anymore. You know, so it is primarily training that I do in SharePoint, sharing with people, explaining to them how they set these things up for themselves. So that's why, you know, when opportunities open up to do Powerapps and Power Automate and adaptive cards and everything, I'm like, yeah, let me at it.
I found a small way to cheat. I mean, I only did it once with a client. I don't do it always, but it's just because I miss the old ways. So those responsive, what they call them, service boxes from Bootstrap and whatnot, and I actually created them, separate HTML page, then use them as an image, and then put them back into the modern page. It looks completely different, but still cool. And by the way, because those are responsive, it fits in beautifully. I can share my screen. I can show you what it looks like, but it looks pretty cool and works great. I think it was just because I missed the old ways. I wanted to see what it would look like. It kind of worked.
Yeah, Laura, while he's pulling up his screen, you've got to come back and do a Powerapps and adaptive card presentation for us. I could tell that somebody's pretty passionate about that.
Yeah, I do like that.
I don't know if you can see my screen.
Not yet.
See, I use Microsoft Teams so much that I don't know how to, if I'm sharing my screen, if it works or doesn't work. And, oh, you need to click share to share, right.
Yeah, I've never shared my screen in Zoom before.
So I use those kind of from Bootstrap, and I use those as images, and then I use them as instead of tiles.
Come on, Picasso, look at you.
Oh, cool. Okay.
It still worked, but it's still worth it. It took like minutes to set up because you create the HTML and Bootstrap page, and you put the icons from what's called it, not from Bootstrap, the other thing that lets you put the icons. What's it called?
I don't even remember anymore.
Yes, but wow, I was there like every day, 100 times, and I can't even remember them. But because it changed, right? But
yeah.
So I grabbed the icons from them. Again, you just create it, lets you do it, and it's just. And then you go to Photoshop, right, and you crop each one, and that's it. Lets you do it. It's a little bit more work, but I was like, I miss those good old days, so I'll do one site to look like that.
Albert, were you talking about jQuery?
No, not jQuery. It was to get the icons. It was
Font Awesome.
Font Awesome. There you go. Thank you.
Okay, gotcha.
But the site where I got all those cool service boxes was Best jQuery Code Lab or something like that. Tons of examples. I just took their code, made it onto HTML. I just put it onto what you call it, Photoshop, and cropped the icons.
They should make Microsoft Teams look like this.
They did. Here's Microsoft Teams. You see that?
Yeah, I know we're in Teams, but they should make it look like this.
But I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that in Microsoft, once you bring this page into Microsoft Teams, that's what it actually looks like.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that.
I told you the guy's got an eye for arts.
Yeah, I like it. It's good.
Well, Laura, thank you very much. Like I said, I hope you can do a Power Apps presentation with adaptive cards as well. Your presentation was so warm and engaging, and you reached out to everybody on the call as well. We love having you here. You're a great speaker, and we're looking forward to getting your slides as well. You spent a lot of time preparing for that. They were beautiful. Thank you so much, and we wish you safe, and we wish you well in Seattle. And Karen, Deepraj, Albert, Randy, really appreciate you attending.
Yeah, thank you guys for your input, your questions. Put me in the hot seat.